Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. Uh, this may be a different type of live. So, um, of course, you all have seen the title of the Facebook of this live. Okay, so we kind of get a feel of what we're talking about here. The Lord led me to speak about it now. I know there will be many questions and concerns and stuff like that. One thing that I do want to go ahead and say, if a person has never been through sexual abuse, spiritual abuse, sexual assault, rape, any of that nature, regardless of where it was taking place, I ask that, there will be no opinion involved. If you've never been in a place where somebody was manipulating you, controlling you, or abusing you, I ask that there really shouldn't be an opinion. I would hope that there would be prayers, and encouragement, but not an opinion. Okay, it's kind of hard talking about this kind of stuff. Yes, there's a lot going on right now in the world, and especially the hurricanes and stuff that's happening. And I've prayed. I have spent time with the Lord, and He is leading me to talk about this situation. The situation happened about 4 or 5 years ago. But with stuff like this, it's hard for people to talk about it. It's hard for people to come out. I was told not to talk about it. I was threatened not to talk about it, so I never did. It took me years to realize what I've been through. I had to go through therapy. I had to go through counseling for my mind to really register, hey, this happened to you. This was abuse. Even though I kind of knew what it was, but my mind wasn't, clicking at that time. And it took some people around me to really help me match my circumstance with my mind. And that's what a lot of people who have been through sexual abuse and manipulation and stuff like that, it takes a minute to register. And so, the Holy Spirit has been leading me to talk about this. This is not in retaliation to anybody. I went through the process of forgiveness without an apology, with being blamed. I went through that process. But the Holy Spirit has led me to talk about it. It's not out of anger. This is not out of vengeance. Vengeance belongs to the Lord. That's not my responsibility. This video is to share my testimony. Not only that, it's to also hope that wherever a person is, you can be bold. You can speak out on what you've been through. Okay, I'm also coming against a system of a culture that is built on the foundation of perversion. The Bible talks about, building on the right foundation, and there are ministries, there are places that's built on the foundation of perversion. And I'm particularly talking about the church. We have this nature where we think it's okay to abuse our sheep. We think it's okay to lead our sheep in opposition towards their salvation. We think it's okay to sexually manipulate and emotionally manipulate the sheep. And that's not okay. Okay. So this is not in retaliation to, I'm telling you where I dealt with it at and what I've been through. Yes, there will be opinions. Yeah, there will be different perspectives. Yes, people will possibly call me a liar. And why are you just talking about it now, 4 or 5 years later? Because I didn't have the boldness. I was fearful. I was told not to talk. I tried to ignore the very thing that was sitting on my back, the very thing that was bringing me pain, the very thing that was killing me on the inside. I tried to ignore it. I tried to move on, but I couldn't move on. And I'm hoping that what I say will hopefully allow somebody else to say, hey, she spoke about it. Let me be bold enough to speak about it. If we don't speak about this type of stuff that goes on in the house of God, it will continue to go on in the house of God. It will be a cycle. You go to different ministries, perversion and adultery and homosexuality and sexual immorality and all this type of stuff. Fornication it's just normal. It's normal in the house of God. It's normal. Like we just sweep it off the rug like it's nothing, and it is something. God is not pleased. you know? So I'm more coming against a system. I'm not, this is, yes, I'm talking about the individual church that I've dealt with it because that's where my story took place. But I'm coming against a system that has built itself off of perversion, regardless of what church it is or wherever it is. Okay. So yes, I am talking about it. And again, if you have not been in a person's shoes who dealt with it, who dealt with this type of stuff, there should be no opinion involved because you don't know how it feels. Okay. You don't know how this feels. And I sat down and talked to the Lord and, you know, went through anger because I'm like, God, I have to tear down my pride. I have to tear down the guilt and the shame and the stuff that I was using to cope. I have to tear it down. I have to become vulnerable to share this personal situation or this thing that happened in my life. And I'll do that in order for somebody else to be saved, or in order for somebody else to be delivered, in order for somebody else's eyes to be blind. Okay. I mean, in order for somebody else's eyes to be unblind, I'm sorry, for their eyes to be open. So for those of you that see this live and attend this particular ministry, I'm sorry that you're just not hearing it. There are people that go there now. You all that go there now, there's some of you that may have went there. There are some of you that may have, grew up in that ministry and sold and tithe and, all this type of stuff. This is my story. This did happen. Everything that I would state in this video with wisdom will be true. I would not be going over every layer and every detail. If anybody wants to know anything, you can call me on my phone. And I don't have any, like I told them, one of the elders that called me and threatened me over the phone, I told her that anybody that calls me and wants to know the truth, I will tell them the truth. I'll talk about it because it's my story. It's what I've been through. So like I said, some people will believe me, some people will not. That's up to you. I'm not here to fight anybody or try to nitpick and stuff like this. This is my story. Okay, there was another young lady that came out with her story, and it gave me the boldness to speak. God led me to speak. He's giving me boldness right now, boldness that I can't have on my own. All right. So there was the young lady. I don't know if y'all heard of her. Her name is Eternity. Her and the first lady that, the first lady that led her into sexual manipulation and sexual abuse and emotional abuse and stuff like that. She recently took her life like 2 or 3 weeks ago because of this stuff. And we sit there and we watch it and we think nothing of it. We sit there and we see people, we think nothing of it. And there is some people that knew about this situation that didn't want to stand up. And then there's a group of people that I am very thankful for, that I keep in contact with, that stood up and did what was right. Okay, so like I said, if you've never been in these shoes before, don't have an opinion. That's all I ask. Don't have an opinion. If you want to know more, I have no problem with sharing this with anybody. I know what this is. Okay. There is no covering. I'm not covering this. There is no show grace to people, cover people. No, this happened at the Cathedral Praise Church Ministries. This is where this took place. This is where this happened. Okay. I don't have to go into different names and stuff like that. If you know the ministry, you know who I'm talking about. Okay, this happened at the Cathedral Praise Church Ministries in HINESVILLE, Georgia. This is where this incident took place. All right. Like I said, I would not be going over every particular detail and layers because some of them are too explicit, but I don't mind talking offline to people. Okay, number one, I would say that spiritual abuse is real. Sexual abuse is real. Emotional and psychological abuse is real. And it happens in the church. And we don't say anything about it. So I will speak about it. Excuse me. I will speak about it. And I don't have any problem being bold and speaking about it. Okay. It took me years to get to this place. Situation happened in 2019. It's 2024. And it took me years, about 4 years This was at the end of last year. I had to go to therapy, and it took me that long to realize, hey, this happened to you. Wake up. This wasn't right. Okay, some people don't know, that you were damaged until you're triggered. And I got triggered because I had to re-talk about the situation. And when I re-talked about the situation to a group of people, I got re-triggered. And it was a good thing, because that showed me that I needed healing. And doing this gives me the healing that I need. Okay? So I am going to talk about it. And like I said, there will be people who will be upset. I do not care. People that will have attitudes and stuff. I've already been threatened. I've already been mocked. I've already been told to shut up. And I'm not going to do that. I do not care. Okay? I do not care. All right. So this took place at the Cathedral Praise Church Ministries. This is my story. I will hope not to be long. This happened in 2019, and I'm going to be as completely vulnerable as I know how. Saying this to everybody online is a life-changing thing. It's a life-changing thing, okay? So this happened at the Cathedral Praise Church Ministries in HINESVILLE, Georgia in 2019, all right? The pastor of that church I've known for about half of my life, okay? He used to come and fellowship with my grandmother, or at the previous church that I was before I joined the Cathedral. He used to come to that church and preach, a couple of times. So I would always enjoy hearing him, or I would always enjoy listening to his sermons and stuff like that. I honored and I respected, this man. And it was around that time that I had my ministry, the How Can It Hear movement. And I started that ministry. It started as a campus ministry in 2018 until it became just, a ministry that, goes different places. And I still have that in 2019. I still have it now. But during that time, I was operating as an evangelist. I was doing a lot of evangelism and stuff like that. And I inboxed him and I said, "Hello, Bishop. Hello, sir. I'm doing a Facebook Live. Do you mind getting on this live with me?" And, because I thought that having somebody higher than me could give me more understanding on what I was called to do and what evangelism was. And so I asked him to be on this live. He agreed to be on this live. And we did the live. We called each other on the phone and pretty much went over the questions and stuff that we was going to talk about, the scriptures and stuff. And we did the live. The live went well. It's actually still up on my movements page. I've not took it down yet. But we did the live. The live went well. The live ended. Maybe like 10 minutes later, he sent me a message and say, "Hey, I don't remember if he texted me or he called me, but he sent me a message and he said, 'Hey, we have a youth Sunday coming up and I wanted you to be the guest speaker.'" And I said, "Okay, great. Let me get permission from the previous pastor that I was before. I don't mind doing that. It sounds like a great idea." So I got permission to go, and I told him, we can go ahead and, proceed. And I preached that youth Sunday. Immediately, I fell in love with the church. I fell in love with the church. I fell in love with the education that the church offered. I thought that I was going to be able to grow as an evangelist at that time. And I thought that I was going to grow more in evangelism because he did non-accredited classes. And it was just an all-around place. I thought that maybe my spirituality and my education and what I was called to do, I thought that I was going to have the ability to grow in it. And so I end up joining the church. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go into details. I can talk offline, okay? But there was some red flags before I joined the ministry, but I ignored the red flags. Nothing happened yet, none of that type of stuff. But there was some red flirtatious flags that I joined. And I would tell you, I was 22 at the time. I had a zeal that was above my rationale, whatever the word is, rational mind. I had a zeal that was just this high. And I was so passionate with what I was called to do. I really thought that going to that place would help me grow. I was sincere about that. That was my only motive. of joining the ministry. And of course, learning from him, because I thought that I would be able to get an education more in theology and the fivefold ministry and all this different type of stuff. So I joined the ministry. Okay. So I fell in love with the ministry. I fell in love with the community and what it offered and stuff like that. And so I made a decision to join the ministry. Probably a couple of months later, I don't remember, the ministerial license, I threw in the trash. The whole licensing video and pictures I took down from my Facebook because it mean nothing to me at this point. It mean nothing. I don't, you get licensed from somebody like that. I won't post it no more on my Facebook. I will take it absolutely down. I took every video down, every picture down, all those preaching videos that I've had speaking at that ministry, I took down because that mean the word was true. But it just meant nothing to me anymore. So he licensed me a couple of months later because he found out that I wasn't licensed. My grandmother passed. I had my trial sermon in 2014. She passed in 2015. So she never had the ability to license me because she was sick and stuff like that. So I never got licensed by anybody. He was the first person who licensed me as a licensed evangelist. So I did get licensed, and then after that, I got put over the evangelism department, also on his fellowship, whatever he has. I got, put in a position as well. So I was all about evangelism. I'm still all about evangelism. Okay. Before we get into that, that's how all of that started. That's how I joined the ministry. Before that, I was going through a lot. At that time, 22 years old, wrestling with a lot of stuff, wrestling with my mental health. Anybody knows me, I'm really big. I'm a mental health advocate. I help people with their mental health because I deal with mine, and I know what it feels like to be in a person's shoes who deal with mental health. So during that time, I was dealing with a lot of depression, and I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I was dealing with a lot of suicide. I was dealing with suicide very strongly. I've had suicidal attempts. I wrote suicide letters because I was tired. I was struggling with my mental health that bad. Of course, at that time, I've never seen a psychiatrist and none of that type of stuff during that time. It's just in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is just warfare. This is just what I'm going through. When really it's a problem. But, like I said, I've never seen anybody for that at that time. So I was struggling with a lot of personal issues and very broken. I was very broken, but I was passionate and I had a zeal. Very vulnerable. And I was just going through a lot. If you tell a person just, if you're not in a person's shoes who deals with that magnitude of warfare, there's no opinion, just encouragement. Okay. But I was going through a lot of that type of stuff, and I would counsel with him. He would know everything that I was going through. You expect when you counsel with somebody and you're telling somebody your business, you expect them to help you grow spiritually and help you get on the path of healing and help you get on the path of deliverance and stuff like that. So that was I wanted to be better. I wanted to really do ministry. I wanted to go out there and preach the gospel, and I wanted to be okay. And I would counsel and share certain things with him. And it wasn't the type of, it wasn't the spiritual, there was never any scriptures involved in the counseling. That was already a red flag. But it seemed like instead of helping me get to where I was supposed to be in God, it's like a person looks at you and already plans to prey on your vulnerability. And they plan to prey on your emotional state and what you're going through. Because even doing the counseling, I've never got any resources. If you know a person, this is why I'm really big on mental health with people, because I do believe that there are certain, not all ministries, but there are certain ministries that are not able to help people with their mental health. They demonize everything, it's over spiritualize everything, instead of leading people to the proper help. And I never got any proper help. When I was 22 and just didn't know, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm depending on, people around me to help me. And of course, talking with him as the pastor, I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting ready to be in a place of getting whole. And that never happened. If anything, it led me into a worse state. Okay. So the counseling stuff happened and stuff like that. And then it turned into biblical and spiritual abuse. Okay. Like I said, there is layers and stuff, and I won't go every layer, because I would begin to talk to him more. And that door had access for me to talk to him more. He opened that door for me in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm blessed. I get to be in the ear of the pastor and tell him what I'm dealing with. He allowed me to shoot the messages. Hey, I'm dealing with this. How do I handle this? Da, 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 da. And so I thought, okay, I get to be in the ear of the pastor and stuff like that, until it started turning to biblical and spiritual abuse. And then the conversation got into my personal, really personal state. Okay. And one of the things that I shared was how I was saving myself for marriage. That conversation had came up. I don't remember how. I just know that that conversation came up. Saving myself for marriage and stuff like that, and what I believe the Bible, because there were some things that I was taught that he didn't believe. And number one, it was already a red flag that he didn't believe that repentance was a part of salvation. That's even on a live that we did years ago. So that was already a red flag for me. I'm really big on salvation and stuff like that. So I mentioned that, I believe in holiness and righteousness and stuff like that. And I'm saving myself, what the Bible said, the bed is undefiled and all this type of stuff. And he would tell me that that's not what the scripture means. He said that sex before marriage wasn't a sin. And there's going to be somebody to say that I'm lying. But he said that sex before marriage wasn't a sin. And he told me that I was wrong concerning that scripture. And in my mind, I'm like, that's not what I was taught, because I come from a background of holiness and righteousness. If anybody know my grandmother, she taught on holiness. She taught on righteousness very heavily. And I come up from a culture of doing what the word of God says to do. I come from a culture of really living righteous behind closed doors, because I had somebody that exemplified that lifestyle. My grandmother, she wasn't just a person that preached it. She was a person that lived it behind closed doors. And I've seen this with my own eyes, things that she went through that I would have thought that in my mind, I was like, go get them back. Go get them back. Say something back. The grace and the love and the forgiveness that she showed people is astounding. So I grew up in a place of holiness and righteousness, and I was taught by my grandmother, mom, to save myself for marriage. That's what I did. 22 years old, of course I dated a little bit. I don't remember none of that, but I was taught to save myself before marriage. I was taught to, keep myself, and that's what I did up to this point before I joined this ministry. And we got onto that subject again. And he will make me feel like I was prideful for saving myself into marriage. He will make me feel like I was prideful for still having your virginity. That's what we call it, your virginity. He would make me feel like I was prideful, like I was trying to be better than somebody else. And that's actually what he said. You think you're better than somebody else because you still have your virginity. I remember the conversation. I remember that coming out of his mouth. Okay. And the biblical and spiritual abuse during that time, of course I knew right from wrong, but during that time, you look at somebody like that and they tell you that you're scripturally wrong, and you look at that person because you want to learn from that person, educational wise and with knowledge and stuff like that. And then you look to them and they say stuff like that. It's like, what do I believe? Of course, I still believe that it was wrong. But, you see that and you're like, how can I learn if we have differences of opinions concerning sin? So the biblical and spiritual abuse started like that, making me feel like I was wrong concerning what I believed, and Eventually it turned into emotional abuse because I want people to understand that predators, people who are wicked, people who refuse to hold themselves accountable, they have the ability to prey on the mindset of the weak ones. Because I know how we talk about this type of stuff, and people like, you're 22 years old, you knew right from wrong, you went here, you did that, and I'm like, you have no absolute clue what manipulation feels like. It is a demonic stronghold. It makes you feel like you do not have a choice, even though you have millions of choices. Just like maybe a couple years ago, I saw a young lady. We was actually at the gas station, and I saw I'm talking about me and a friend. We was actually at a gas station, and I saw a young lady get out of the car, and the guy hit her and was yelling at her. And I looked at him and I looked at her, and she walked in the store crying. So I pumped the gas and I go back in the store, and I saw a police officer. I'm like, okay, there's a police officer here. The lady is standing right next to him, and I went to the act like I was going to the bathroom, and I looked at the lady. I said, "Ma'am, are you all right?" And her face was red and stuff like this. I said, "Ma'am, you all right?" And I was trying to be loud, like, there's police right there. You just got done being abused. I know he's abusing you. There's a police right there. But she got in the car, paid for the stuff, got in the car, and went home with the guy. And in your mind is like, why didn't you say anything? Like, why didn't she run? She had the chance to run. Because even though you have a choice, manipulation and control makes you feel like you do not have a choice. And I was in a place where I was heavily manipulated and controlled. And I had such a zeal, such a passion to do ministry. I had such a zeal and such a passion to do what I was called to do. And I felt like I was led down a wrong path. You know, you would look for your leaders and people around to lead you into a place of your walk, your salvation with God. And they lead you in the complete opposite way. So that's why I tell people, if you don't know what that feels like, you don't have an opinion. This is, I tell people when I joined the ministry, I had no ulterior motive. Yeah, I'm 22. Of course, he's 60. That's not my cup of tea at all. I didn't have no ulterior motives. And I would tell people, whoever you submit to is the spirit that you're going to pick up. You're going to pick up that spirit. I honestly do believe, this is why I'm very careful of who I submit to. I'm very careful of people that, you there's in your ear all the time. I don't listen to everybody, and I will not submit to anybody unless the Lord tell me to do that. I've learned my lesson, or I've been through that already. I don't want to, go through that again. But manipulation and control is real. People look at your vulnerability. They look at where you are. They look at your mental state. They look at what you have and what you don't have. And they say, let me control this person with this. Let me control this person with this. And when people think about sexual abuse, you think about somebody coming and tie you up in the back of a car. No, they'd be nice to you. They'd be very nice to you. They'll be very nice to you. And the more nice they are to you, the more they help you, the more you be comfortable with them, the more you lean on them, it becomes manipulation and control. Because I got led in the opposite way of salvation. So after the biblical abuse, the emotional manipulation began to start, then the sexual abuse came. And I have to be vulnerable when I talk about this, when I say this. I saved myself for marriage. I kept my virginity, what I was taught, and that was taken away from me. That was stolen from me that I can't get back. And I don't mind being bold and saying that because I can't get it back, but I'm being restored. So the sexual abuse began to happen. The sexual manipulation began to happen. We're not going to go in details concerning it, but it began to happen. It actually happened like 7 months after I joined the ministry and stuff like that. And then let's roll over to the summer of 2020. 2020, I was wrestling with some things personally, homelessness and stuff like that. And so the manipulation and control lasted. We get to the summer of 2020. It lasted for almost a year during that section. And I moved in with a young lady from that particular church. I moved in with the young lady. The young lady saw the mental state that I was in behind closed doors, and she found out, and she saw what it was doing to me behind closed doors, and she wanted to move and act upon it immediately. And in my mind, I was so fearful and I was so scared. I'm like, what about me? Like, what about me? What am I going to do? I don't want anybody to know, like, I'm scared. That's exactly what my mind was. And so I believe at that time, she took it in her hands to, I don't know how people found out. A couple of people found out from the ministry, but all of the elders at that time, okay, I'm not going to say any names, but the elders at that ministry during that time, because some are not there, some knew, whatever the situation may be, but at that time, all of them knew what took place, what happened. Okay? They knew that something was going on. And this sprung out into the summer of 2020. Okay? So they found out and stuff like that, and a meeting was called. A meeting was called with the elders and myself. Okay? For those of y'all that may be listening that go to that church and you know what the church looked like, this meeting was called in the fellowship hall, in their fellowship hall. You ever seen the American Idol where the person stands up in front of the judges and they sing and the judges are sitting behind the table? That's exactly what was going on with me in that fellowship hall. They put a chair in the middle of the room. Just a single chair, single me out from everything. And then each elder was sitting behind a desk, like a table, like they was getting ready to pursue judgment or something. Just had me sitting in a chair. During this meeting, documents were passed out. Papers were passed out amongst each other. They gave me a document. The document had A through Z, and I can't remember if it was on the document or it was in the email, but I know it had A through Z. That's on one of them, but the document had A through Z. We're going to go with that on it. And when I say A through Z, I literally mean alphabetical order A through Z. Okay. It had A through Z on there. Everything that I told the young lady that I was staying with and other things that they found out or whatever the situation may be, A through Z. This happened. You went this place. This happened. This is where it happened. You said this. A through Z. And I was to go on A through Z and say whether it was true or it was not true. They passed out more documents in this meeting, and it had text messages on the paper, like printed out text messages. What was so horrible about this was, in this particular meeting, my mental health information was on this document that I did not want anybody else to know. I don't care who you got it from. You should not be passing it amongst yourself. My suicide attempts, me wanting to kill myself, and going through all of this stuff was on this piece of paper, and that should have not been on there. Okay? So I had these documents in my hand, and I was to go through A through Z to try to figure out whether this was true or this is not true. Okay. What they do not know, that before this meeting, before I walked in the church for the meeting, their beloved pastor called me and told me that I better protect him, protect us, protect him. So I went in this meeting with utmost fear. because I didn't have anybody with me. There was no friend. There was no advocate. There was nobody with me. There was nobody to say, hey, you better record when you go in here. Keep your phone recorded. Record everything in here. Let me come in here with you. Let me take pictures. Let me be by your side so I could be a witness. I went in here by myself. And I had 7 to 8 elders sitting on this, on behind the table. And I don't know what's getting ready to go on. I don't know. I'm scared. So I'm sitting in this meeting and I was to go through these documents. And because of the phone call that I get, because of my fear, because of the shame, and because of the guilt, I went through every one of these documents. I said, that's not true. That didn't happen. I didn't say that. That's not what that means. Let me clear it up. Let me clear it up. That's not true. False, 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 false. I said that everything was false. Because even in the state of mind, I realized that there was no person on this behind these tables, on this staff, that had my best interest in heart or had my best interest in mind. They did not call this meeting to get information from me so that they can do what's right, so that they can help me, because I was crying out for help for a long time. I desperately wanted to get out of that situation. I did not know how to. And I didn't have anybody to pull me out. Crying on the inside. Every Sunday I would go to church. Just going through. Every Sunday I would go to church. Going through. Losing weight. Don't know what to do, crying out for help. I go to church, I do the media, go home and have a mental attack because I was just going through so much. And so in this meeting, I said, no, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. And I realized there was nobody in this room that had my best interest in mind. And even if I told these people that I was being sexually manipulated and abused, what was y'all going to do? Was you going to stand up and do what was right, or was you going to say, hey, I'm sorry about that, but you're going to have to leave? And he was going to still preach, because that's exactly what happened. He was still behind the pulpit preaching the so-called whatever his gospel is. So I told these people, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And they said, okay, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen. That didn't happen at all. There was, one of the horrible things that even in this meeting, when they brought up my mental health, when I don't remember what elder said it, but she said that somebody said that you wanted to kill yourself. And I looked at all the elders and I said, I paused, and then I had a mental breakdown in front of each and every one of these elders. Did you know not one of them got up and said nothing? All of them looked at me and said, "Aw." Nobody got up to console me. Nobody got up to say, are you sure you're okay? You in the room along with us. You can tell us the truth. Nobody cared about the truth. You wanted information. They all wanted information so they can cover their beloved church, cover their beloved pastor. But I'm sitting in the middle of a room, breaking down, crying my eyes out, and nobody moved to give me a napkin to come and to console me. Because right then and there, I really want to tell these people I'm in a trap and I need help. I'm being led down the wrong path and I really need help. But there was nobody in that room to trust. So I said, no, everything's false. Nothing happened. They all making it up. Nothing that you heard was true. I wiped my little eyes with my sleeve. Nobody said nothing. The meeting was shut down. Everybody got in a circle. We held hands and we prayed. And to hear somebody say that they was dealing with suicide and stuff, you would think that somebody would say, hey, I'm gonna give you some resources. We know some people that can help you with that, or some counseling, or maybe a therapist might work. Didn't say not one word. I walked out of the church with my head down and I went to the car. And I actually stayed at this ministry for maybe like a few more months until I left. And people are trying to figure out, well, why did you stay if you knew you went through all that? Because there was nowhere else to go. When I say control and manipulation is real, it is real. So I stayed in that community with this big old thing on my back. And you knew what was so funny? This is what I believe. For people be trying to take your words and they be trying to get you for defamation and stuff like that. I honestly do believe that each and every one of those elders in that meeting knew that everything that was on that document was true. Because that's not the first time that you heard anything like that happening. You're going to just let that be whatever it is. I honestly do believe that everybody on that in that church knew that those things were true. And the meeting was not to get information to help me. It was not to get the truth. They wanted to hear exactly what I said. It wasn't true. So that he can be covered. The church can be covered. Everybody make their money. Everybody keep going on what they're going on. Doing whatever they're doing. That's exactly what they wanted to hear. Because even if I did say, yes, I'm being sexually manipulated and abused. It's an abuse of power going on and I don't know how to get out of this trap. Do you really think that they was going to help me? These people would have kicked me out of the church. He would have still kept doing what he was doing. And I would have been left in the wind. So the meeting ended, walked out of the church, got back in my car. Didn't have a place to go. Didn't have a place to stay. So I ended up moving in. And this is already crazy. Because some of y'all going to be like, what? Why did you do? I ended up moving in with one of the elders. She was pretty much like a new one. For like 2 months. Moved in with her. Got accused of more accusations. Something I never did. Got accused from her of an accusation that I never did. Had to go through hell there. Okay. So I was fighting all of these battles. After, I moved in with her and that situation occurred and stuff like that. And I ended up moving in the next day. He calls me. Their beloved pastor calls me on the phone. This would have never happened if it wasn't because of you. You want to know what else he said? You owe me. You owe me. Said that twice. And I got on the phone and I held my head down. I said, yeah. Because in my mind, I thought it was my fault. I really believed that it was my fault. I was ashamed of myself. Because I feel like this situation happened because of me. I did this. It's all my fault. I'm shamed. And in that moment, I believed that it was my fault. He told me that it was my fault. He told me that I owed him. So even after that, the sexual manipulation lasted a couple of more months. During that time that I was going through all of that, I dropped ministry. I did not have a zeal or a passion anymore for evangelism. The only thing I would do was come to church, do the media, and go home. I stopped the evangelism. I stopped my ministry. My mental state got worse and worse and worse. I got addicted to pills. And it's not over the counter, but I got addicted to pills. I began to wrestle with suicide even the more. I started struggling with the spirit of insanity. If nobody knows what that is, spirit of insanity, we never struggle with it. I can't really explain it to you. It was only by the grace of God that my mind stayed in the capacity that it did. There would be times when I would be on the bed and I would take my knees and I would hold them like this. And I would hold my arms like this and I would begin to rock back and forth like this on the bed. Because I was struggling so much in my mind. I was so much in a trap, so much in a pit, and so much in a hole. It's like I stopped chasing after salvation. And the person that's supposed to teach me how to get there and preach to me how to stay in that place was the same person that was putting me in bondage. I started losing a passion for God. because I did not want to. The only great thing about that is that I still had my conviction. My conviction was still there. That's why I was feeling what I was feeling. I didn't know how to get out. I did not know how to leave. There was nobody in that church that I can call and say, hey, he did this. Nobody. So eventually I left the ministry. I moved to another city. I left the ministry. And I just started working and stuff like that. And I just continued to go on like nothing mattered. That was it. Okay. After I left and, moved and stuff like that and started working and stuff like that, it still didn't register in my mind that you were sexually manipulated and sexually abused. You were psychologically manipulated and abused. It did not register until the end of 2023. That's a long time. So I went on in life thinking that, that was a bad moment. That was a bad place, but I'm out of it now. And I never really was out of it. I never really came out of it because it never clicked in my mind that, hey, this wasn't right. This wasn't cool. You were hurt. You were damaged. Wake up. And it took people to get around me that actually stood up for what was right to tell me, hey, this was not right. During that time, I lost so much. The very one thing that I valued the most, of course I value God above all, but one of the very things that I value that I talked about earlier was stolen, was taken away from me. And yes, I was 22 years old. That's why the title of this is Losing My Innocence. Because my eyes was not open to certain things. It wasn't supposed to be open to certain things until, that's why they tell you to save yourself into marriage, do what's right. But my eyes was open to certain things that I wasn't ready for, that I did not want to do, that I felt like I had to do, because the person came off as being nice, and the person made you feel like there's nobody else there for you. I'm the only one there. I'm the only one that can help you. That's how that came off. Or in my mind, I'm like, I have to do this. And I know that I was not the only one. And I'm going to leave it as there. Leave it as that. I wasn't the only one. There are wicked people that looks at vulnerable people and they take advantage of them. They take advantage of them. So I lost so much that was of importance to me. And it's by the grace of God that I did not walk away fully. I've known a lot of people that have been through things like this. They never come back to God. They lose their salvation because the person that's supposed to lead them to Christ is leading them to a place of bondage. And I know people who never came back to Christ. They never came back to salvation. And it's by the grace of God that I came back to Christ, that I came back to ministry, and I'm on fire for Christ now. But if I never talked about this, I would have never began to be really healed. I thought that if I ignored this and just looked at it as a bad place in my life, and I surpassed it, that everything was going to be well, and it ate me up for years. I was in trauma for so many years. That whole situation damaged the perception of a father figure. It damaged that perception. Restoration is still available, of course, but it made me scared to even submit to like older men. And they could be just as nice and stuff like that, really be sent from God, but it made me skeptical about everything. It damaged a lot of stuff. I wasn't that type of person that said that I'm gonna walk away from the church because everybody's the same. And, that's why you cannot play with sheep. You cannot do that because everybody is on their different walks with God. Everybody is not in a place where they have met God for themselves. Some people meet God through the preacher, and the preacher is supposed to be the representation of God. So when a new believer comes to Christ, because that new believer don't have a solid relationship with God where he is able to discern the difference between somebody being used by the devil and this actually being God, when they don't have that discernment and they look at the person that's supposed to be representing God to do them wrong, they don't come back. But I was in a place, I may have not been heavily in the word or heavily in the faith. I was always taught it. I've seen people who represented God the right way. So I knew that everybody like this is not the same. And I'm glad that I had that mindset because I did walk away from the church for about a year and some change. I didn't go to church. I didn't submit to nobody. I didn't want to have nothing to do with the church. I just worked, stacked money, and mind my own business. And I hate the fact that it took me years to really feel to figure out that you have been hurt by somebody's intent not to lead you to salvation, not to lead you down the right path, but to look at you in a perverted way and want to take advantage of you. That, like I said, I wasn't going to get into layers and layers and layers, but I'm highly disappointed at some of the people that were there that really knew in their heart that this has to be true. This isn't the first time they heard of something like this. They seen something like this. Never had anybody reach out to me and say, hey, I'm going to give you another chance you can talk to me. Nobody's here. You can tell me it's the truth. I stand with you. Nobody. Because they knew it was true. But they covered him. Because that's their culture. That's the culture. Nobody knew how broken I was. My addiction, my mental state. I couldn't do it anymore. Even when I started going back to the ministry after that meeting, I sat in services, my mind was blanked. I would just be there to just do the media. I had to go back and forth to the bathroom to have mental attacks. Mental panic attacks. There would be certain times, even out after all that, I'll walk. There was an incident where I walked in their ushers room. They have an ushers room. I walked in the ushers room, looking at certain things in there. And this man, their beloved pastor, comes in the ushers room and grabs and gropes me in the church. Grabs and he gropes me in the ushers room. Started feeling all over me in the ushers room. Anybody could have walked past. Anybody could have said something. But this man comes and grabs my tail and gropes me. There was a meeting that we had in his office. I took a step back from ministry. I took a step back from the evangelism department because I thought that after all of that, if I just stop and just mind my own business, because I told him I cannot do this. Like I'm going through a lot, and the emotional manipulation would happen. There was a time when I was in there with another elder, had a meeting, and I said, I want to get back to ministry. I really do. And this is a time where God was really dealing with me to leave. I really want to get back to ministry because in my mind, it was like, if I just get that zeal back, I can look over everything else. So I stood there in that meeting and I was talking to him and I was talking to another elder, and we made a decision for me to get back into ministry. The meeting was over. She walks out ahead of me. I walk out behind her. He walks out behind me and grabs my tail. Grabs my tail, and I go back to the car. And I sit there and cry because I was doing everything I possibly can to get back into ministry. And yes, I was still there. And yes, my mind was not on. It was not on. I was struggling in my mind to try to figure out, if I just distract myself with the zeal, we can go to the community and make some events. That was where my mind was. It was always ministry. It was always evangelism. And I went to the car that day and I cried. I said, no, I don't know if this is going to work. So that's around the time when I made a decision to leave the church, leave that ministry. Never told a soul, never told anybody until the end of 2023. To the end of 2023, when a lot of more people began to find out. And even some people who found out never said not a word, never called, never said anything. Because it was all about covering him. Let's show him grace. Let's show, that is what was going on. And it's just not about this incident. It's about the whole system of a culture. Let's show the leaders grace. You do something, you make a mistake, yeah. But when you continue to do something over and over and make it a cycle, there is no grace for this. It's time to, it's really time to reevaluate. Like, why are you damaging your sheep and leading them the wrong way? Why? It even turned into a place where I got assaulted. And didn't know that the assault was an assault until somebody woke up my brain. Apparently telling somebody no, it's a sexual assault. That didn't register in my mind until the end of last year that this was assault. So I had to go through counseling and therapy. And thank God for the people that were by my side who helped me through the process and stuff like that. I thank God for them. Okay. Like I said, there are so many other layers that I cannot share on here. I cannot say. But stuff like this is real. It's real. Sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual manipulation, psychological abuse, spiritual abuse, abuse of power in the house of God is real. And I do not understand why leaders want to sleep with their sheep. Why lead your sheep down a path that they don't need to be on? I don't understand. And I'm so sorry to the ones that go there. I'm so sorry to the ones that are still there. And you hearing about this, I'm so sorry. People are going to ask me, why are you coming out with it now? Because I felt bold now. There was no boldness then. There was nothing then. I was shamed. I was in guilt. I was made to feel like all of that was my fault. And I believed that for a long time. So those of y'all that went through stuff like this, been through stuff like this, you can speak. You can say something. You have a voice. It got to be stopped. And yes, that belongs to the Lord. That is his job. But if we don't say nothing, it will continue to go on. And it would continue to go on. It will become a cycle. Sheep will get damaged. They would go through this stuff. They were made to put silent. Because one of his elders, I'm not going to say your name, okay? But one of his elders who was outside, and that's when I was still there, we was outside. She comes to me and looks at me and say, hey, that wasn't real. That wasn't real. And I said, huh? She said, that wasn't real. She was trying to make me feel like I was having some type of psychotic episode or something, like the things that I was dealing with was something that I just made up in the figment of my imagination. I completely hate when people do stuff like that. She looked at me and she said that wasn't real. And if you're telling me that means that you know that what happened had to be true. And I have this elder on video, on a phone call, calling me and threatening me. She didn't know that I was recording. She's calling me. She said, you better not tell another word. You better not say anything else about him. You better not tell another soul. You need to move on. And I explained to this elder, I said, you have no idea of the years of sexual manipulation and control, spiritual abuse that I've been with your beloved pastor. I would have thought that as a woman, you would come and you would say, let me help you. What's the truth? What's really going on? But the system, the culture of a foundation that's built on perversion is so strong to where it becomes the norm. And perversion allows people to be blind. That's why when you go to a very perverted house, you will not see sermons of holiness and righteousness and denying yourself and living for God and making sure that your spirit outweighs your flesh. You'll never hear that, because truth be told, the time that I was there, I ain't never heard no holiness preaching. I've never heard any righteousness. I have never heard any flee from lust. Resist the devil, he'll flee from you. I've never heard any of that type of preaching, denying yourself, picking up the cross and following Christ. It was always carnal messages, because you would never see purity preached in a perverted house. It's impossible. When the devil owns a house, when he owns a ministry, you will never hear purity preached. And if purity is being preached, it's demonic and it's perverted. And that's the system of this culture that happens in the body of Christ. And we do this to our sheep, and then we get behind the pulpit and we preach. No conviction, nothing in you that says, I'm leading these people down the wrong path. I'm deceiving these people. None of that. But the perversion is a bunch of greed that looks at vulnerability, looks at people. You know, some of the people in the church, and no names, told me that sex before marriage isn't a sin. And in my mind, I was like, y'all really do believe this stuff. People committing adultery and fornication, and this person sleeping with that person. I have never been part of a house that was so perverted in my life. The time my grandmother was here, she was my leader. She was my pastor. I've always known to do right, to do what was right, to live right behind closed doors. I joined the ministry. I'm like, whoa. Beep, beep, alert, alert. What is going on here? There's a lot of perversion going on here. And I tell you, I preach this all the time. Again, I would say it every time. Whoever you submit to is the spirit that you're going to pick up. And that's exactly what happened to me. I'm so sorry for the ones that are listening to this or will watch this video. I am so sorry. If I had the boldness to speak about this years ago, I would have done it years ago. But this is the time that God is telling me to speak. And I'm going to do what he has me to say. And I do not care with anybody's opinions. I really don't. I don't care about anybody's opinions. This is something that the Lord told me to do, and I'm doing it. And he's given me grace to do it and the strength to do it. So I pray that people's eyes will be opened. May the eyes be open. May your eyes not be blind anymore. I lost a lot during that situation. I lost a lot. And I know that restoration is available. But on my human side, things you just don't get back. You just don't get it back. The most important thing to me besides God that I can count on my fingers was taken away from me. My innocence was taken away. And yes, restoration is available, but I can't get that back. Sexual abuse in the house of the Lord is real. Sexual abuse everywhere is real. But it tears me up to hear about it from any aspect, but mostly in the house of God, because it's supposed to be people leading you to Christ, not bringing you away from Christ. Everything I stated in this video is absolutely true. I left some things out because that's something that I can, say to somebody over the phone. Like I said before, the threats came. I was told to be quiet, but I'm not going to be quiet. And it's out here now. And this is my testimony. I'm alive. Situation tried to kill and it tried to take me out. And it tried to kill me, but I am alive. I planned my whole death because of that situation. But God had other plans. But I won't be surprised that there were others, regardless of where you are. It's not okay for pastors to sleep with their sheep. It's not okay. It will never be okay. It's not okay to have authority. Not okay to be a predator behind the pulpit and to look at vulnerable people and take advantage of them. It's not okay to be a stumbling block in the midst of somebody's salvation. I'm just grateful that I never left God because of it. I may have walked away from the church for a minute, but I've never left God. I was angry, but I never left. I was a part of a ministry that didn't do its job, that took no accountability, no responsibility for sheep, didn't do any more investigation to figure out what was going on. But they wanted to protect their beloved pastor and their image and their reputation. That's what they wanted, just like any other system of the culture, any other church. Protect the reputation. And I had to tear down mine to share this. Because I know there's going to be one person that says, I was blessed by what you said. I went through the same thing. I'm ready to speak up to, regardless of where it is, how it happened. So I lost a lot. But God is a restorer. God is a deliverer. And God is a healer. This is my story again. This was not made in no retaliation. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm still dealing with the pain and the trauma and the emotional turmoil. I just got to a place not long ago where I got my zeal and my passion back. And God is using me to speak words and prophesy and save souls and stuff like that. So I'm happy about that. But there was a time where I didn't pay that stuff no mind. I was damaged and treated badly by a ministry. I received no help, nothing. And I have to remember that for the rest of my life. But I know that God is a healer. He's a restorer. So sexual assault is real. Telling somebody no, sexual assault. I don't need to say anything after that. Sexual abuse is real. Spiritual abuse is real. And even if the person, people that surround the person that did it, that don't stand up and say something, you are guilty by association. It's like you are an accomplice without doing the actual thing. But because you don't speak up and say, hey, we can't do this, this isn't right, guilty by association. So this is more against systems. This is more against cultures that built itself off a foundation of perversion. This got to stop. God is not pleased with stuff like this. He has never been pleased with stuff like this. The blood is on the hands of leaders, the hands of people who allow this continue to go on. And it will be one person that will come out and start talking for such a time as this. Okay, so this ain't no regular Facebook Live, so that's my story, that's my testimony. I pray that those of you that know me will continue to keep me in your prayers. Those of you that know me will continue to intercede for me. Those of you that don't know what this feels like, don't have an opinion. Ask the Lord for guidance, but don't have an opinion if you don't know what this feels like. Pray and just keep me in your prayers. For those of y'all that have any opposition towards this, I honestly do not care. This happened, this is true, and I believe that there possibly will be some retaliation behind the closed doors, but I do not care. The Lord tells me to do something, I'm going to do it, and He covers me through it. I will say what the Lord has me to say for people that He has me to say it to. And it may not be a person who may speak up, but it may be somebody in the back, behind the scenes that may have watched this, that may say, hey, I'm going to speak up too. I've been through this. It's okay to talk. It's okay to speak up. It's okay to say something. That's my mission. That was my goal for making this. But yes, I went through sexual and psychological abuse at this church. I didn't receive any help. I was done wrong. And I almost lost my life trying my best to ignore what happened to me. But I cannot do that anymore. Okay, so God bless each and every one of you. Though, like I said before, those of you all, keep me in your prayers. Those of you all that may have something negative to say, don't say it. Don't say it. And like I said, if anybody wants to know anything else, any questions, you can always give me a phone call or inbox me. I don't have no problem talking about it anymore. I'm talking about it now, so there's no need in hiding it. Predators are real. Wicked people are real. Warlocks are real. And they stand behind the pulpit with a microphone preaching you happy, but not living behind closed doors, the gospel. This is my story. Okay, so you all keep me in your prayers. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you all have a blessed day.